Have you ever wondered why your most desperate prayers seem to push your blessings further away? Why the harder you pray for healing, the more your body seems to resist? Why your urgent pleas for financial breakthrough only seem to deepen the hole of scarcity you're trying to escape? There's a spiritual truth so radical, so counterintuitive, that it challenges everything you've ever been taught about prayer, faith, and your relationship with the divine. What if I told you that the very way you've been approaching God, the way most of us were taught since childhood, is actually creating an invisible barrier between you and the abundance, healing, and breakthrough you desperately seek? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You pray with tears streaming down your face, begging God for help with your finances, only to receive another unexpected bill in the mail the next day. You cry out for physical healing, yet wake up feeling even worse. You plead for divine guidance about a critical decision, yet find yourself more confused and paralyzed than before you prayed. This isn't coincidence, and it's certainly not because God isn't listening or doesn't care about you. Smith Wigglesworth discovered something that religious institutions have kept hidden for centuries, a spiritual paradox that explains why traditional prayer often fails to produce the miracles we're seeking. Every single time you ask God for something, you're doing more than just making a request. You're making a powerful declaration to the universe about what you believe to be true about yourself right now. When you pray, "God, please heal me," you're unconsciously affirming, "I am sick, I am broken, I am separated from wholeness." When you beg, "God, please bring me money," you're energetically declaring, "I am in lack, I am empty, I am insufficient." This creates what Wigglesworth called an energetic signature of absence, a vibrational frequency that actually repels the very blessings you're trying to attract. It's like standing in a river of abundance while holding an umbrella over your head, then wondering why you're still thirsty. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover will completely transform not just how you pray, but how you understand your entire identity as a spiritual being. Wigglesworth's revolutionary insight reveals that you are not a separate entity begging an external God for favors. You are something far more powerful, far more divine than you've ever been taught to believe. What if the breakthrough you're seeking isn't about convincing God to give you something you don't have, but about recognizing what's already flowing through you in this very moment? What if you've been standing in the middle of infinite supply, surrounded by healing, abundance, and divine wisdom, but your very approach to prayer has been blocking you from experiencing it? This is where the transformation begins, not in doing more, but in understanding differently. The hidden truth Smith Wigglesworth uncovered isn't about adding more intensity to your prayers or finding better words to convince God. It's about a complete mindset revolution in how you relate to the divine. Think about the physical difference between these two postures. Imagine yourself with clenched fists, jaw tight, desperately pleading and begging for something you believe is being withheld from you. Now contrast that with open hands, relaxed shoulders, breathing deeply, simply receiving what's already being poured into you. Can you feel the energetic difference between these two states? The first approach, the asking, the pleading, the bargaining, operates from a consciousness of separation. It assumes there's a gap between you and what you need, between you and God's provision. It treats the divine like a distant authority figure who needs to be convinced, persuaded, or appeased. This creates enormous spiritual tension because you're essentially declaring with every prayer, "I don't have this. I am lacking. I am separate from my good." But here's the revelation that changed everything for Wigglesworth after years of spiritual struggle and personal searching. God isn't withholding anything from you. Not healing, not abundance, not wisdom, not peace, not guidance. These aren't locked away in some cosmic vault, waiting for you to say the magic words or perform the right spiritual rituals. They're not rewards for good behavior or prizes for persistent begging. If you've resonated with this message of divine receptivity, I'd love for you to join our community of spiritual seekers who are learning to shift from separation consciousness to oneness awareness. A simple subscription helps you stay connected with teachings that continue to explore this path of transformation. They're already flowing. Right now, in this very moment. Like a perpetual stream of grace that never stops, never diminishes, never runs dry. The divine supply isn't something that gets turned on when you pray correctly. It's a constant broadcast, an eternal transmission that's been flowing toward you and through you since before you were born. The journey isn't about making something happen. It's about allowing what's already happening to become visible in your experience. It's about shifting from the exhausting energy of trying to extract blessings from a reluctant universe to the peaceful energy of receiving from an abundant source that never stops giving. This subtle shift, from asking to allowing, from demanding to receiving, from separation to recognition, transforms every dimension of your existence. Your health begins to respond differently. Your relationships shift. Your sense of purpose clarifies. Your financial situation evolves, not through manipulation or force, but through alignment with what was always meant to be yours. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding this intellectually is just the beginning. The real impact happens when you grasp the mechanics behind why asking creates resistance while receiving creates flow. There's a spiritual physics at work here, an energetic blueprint that determines whether your prayers open doors or inadvertently close them. When you truly understand how your consciousness either attracts or repels the blessings already surrounding you, everything changes. Write "I'm ready to receive" in the comments if this resonates with something you've been sensing but couldn't quite put into words. Think about how a radio works for a moment. Right now, at this very second, there are countless radio signals passing through the room you're sitting in. Music, news, conversations, all of it traveling through the air around you in invisible waves. But you don't hear any of it until you turn on a receiver and tune it to the right frequency. The broadcast didn't suddenly begin when you powered on your radio. It was there all along. You simply aligned yourself with something that was already transmitting. This is the exact blueprint of how divine supply operates in your life. Healing isn't something God starts sending when you pray for it. Abundance isn't activated by your petition. Wisdom isn't distributed based on who asks most persistently. These realities are constantly broadcasting through the fabric of creation, like an infinite transmission that never stops, never weakens, never runs out. Your spiritual journey isn't about convincing God to start broadcasting. It's about learning to tune your consciousness to what's already playing. But here's where the hidden mechanics become absolutely crucial to understand. Behind the scenes, there's an energetic reality at work that most spiritual teachings completely overlook. Every thought, every emotion, every belief you hold creates a specific vibrational signature in your being. This isn't mystical, wishful thinking. It's about the frequency at which your consciousness operates. When you approach God in asking mode, your entire energetic system resonates with a frequency of lack. There's an underlying desperation embedded in the asking itself, a vibration that quietly but powerfully declares, "I am incomplete. I am separate from what I need. I am insufficient." This energy of deficiency creates a kind of spiritual static that interferes with your ability to receive the transmission that's already flowing. It's like trying to tune into a clear radio station while simultaneously broadcasting interference on the same frequency. The impact of this mindset goes far deeper than most people realize. That vibration of lack doesn't just affect your prayers. It colors your decisions, influences your relationships, shapes how you see opportunities, and determines what possibilities you can even perceive. When you're resonating at the frequency of not enough, you literally cannot recognize abundance even when it's standing right in front of you. But receiving consciousness operates at a completely different frequency. It vibrates with fullness, completeness, union with the source of all supply. There's a quiet recognition, pulsing through this state of awareness. What God has, I have. What God is, I am. This isn't arrogance. It's the acknowledgement of your true identity as an expression of divine being. When you shift into this frequency, something remarkable happens. The same opportunities, the same resources, the same relationships that were invisible to you in lack consciousness suddenly become apparent. The transformation isn't that circumstances changed. It's that your ability to perceive what was always there has shifted. You've tuned your receiver to match the frequency of the broadcast that never stopped transmitting. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the theory is one thing, but experiencing the actual shift in your daily life is where the real revelation occurs. There's a specific practice that Smith Wigglesworth developed to help people make this transition from asking consciousness to receiving consciousness. And it's so simple that most people dismiss it at first. Drop "I'm tuning my frequency" in the comments if you're beginning to sense how this energetic shift could change everything about how you experience your spiritual life. The practice itself is so elegantly simple that when people first hear it, they often feel disappointed. We've been conditioned to believe that spiritual transformation requires elaborate rituals, complex techniques, hours of meditation, or mastery of ancient practices. We think breakthrough demands intensity, effort, striving. But the hidden truth Wigglesworth uncovered completely contradicts this assumption. The real work doesn't happen in grand gestures or complicated ceremonies. It unfolds in quiet moments when you simply sit in receptive awareness, creating space for divine intelligence to flow through your consciousness without your interference. And here's what most people misunderstand about this practice. This receptive state isn't passive at all. It's one of the most spiritually active positions you can take. Think about what this actually requires from you. It demands courage to set aside the habitual patterns of control that have governed your life. Every fiber of your being wants to manage, manipulate, direct, force outcomes. Letting go of that grip feels terrifying at first. It requires genuine discipline to quiet the relentless chatter of your mind, that constant voice listing everything you need, everything you lack, everything you must make happen. And perhaps most challenging of all, it asks you to release your carefully constructed blueprint for how your life should unfold and trust that divine intelligence might have a design far more brilliant than anything you could conceive. The practice begins with something almost absurdly simple. Set aside just 10 minutes each day. That's all. Not hours, not elaborate preparation, just 10 quiet minutes where you won't be disturbed. And here's the transformation that happens in those minutes. Instead of approaching this time with your usual shopping list of needs and wants, you do something radically different. You sit in stillness and say within yourself, "I am now open to receive all that God is giving me." Notice what's happening in that statement. You're not asking for the promotion. You're not manifesting the relationship. You're not claiming the healing. You're not trying to convince God of anything or prove your worthiness. You're simply acknowledging that there's a flow already moving toward you, and you're opening yourself to it. This shift in your daily practice creates an energetic transformation that ripples through everything. Your decisions start emerging from a different place, not from desperation or fear, but from clarity and peace. The journey of your day unfolds differently when you begin it by tuning into what's already being given rather than rehearsing what you believe you lack. Behind the scenes, your entire nervous system starts operating from a different baseline. Instead of the constant tension of striving, there's a growing sense of trust. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because while the practice sounds simple, there are specific obstacles that almost everyone encounters when they first attempt this shift. The biggest challenge isn't finding 10 minutes, it's what your mind does during those 10 minutes. There's a particular resistance that shows up, and understanding how to work with it makes all the difference between transformation and frustration. Type "opening my hands" in the comments if you're ready to release control and practice this receptive awareness in your own life. Let me share what happened when someone actually applied this practice in the most desperate circumstances imaginable. Maria had been praying for financial breakthrough for 3 solid years. Not casual prayers, desperate, tear-filled petitions. She would literally cry out to God multiple times a day, begging for relief from the mounting debt that seemed to swallow her alive. And here's what made her situation so agonizing. The harder she prayed, the worse things became. Every month brought new unexpected expenses, deeper debt, more crushing anxiety. When she first encountered Wigglesworth's teaching on receptivity, her immediate reaction was resistance. "If I stop asking, God will forget about me completely," she thought. But desperation has a way of making us willing to try what seems counterintuitive. She committed to an experiment. 30 days of practicing receiving instead of asking. Each morning and evening she would sit quietly and simply open her consciousness to divine supply, affirming, "I am now open to receive all that God is giving me." The first 2 weeks felt completely empty. Nothing changed externally. The bills kept coming. The debt remained. But something subtle was shifting beneath the surface. That constant knot of panic in her chest began to loosen. By week 3, something remarkable started happening. Unexpected opportunities appeared seemingly out of nowhere. A freelance project she hadn't pursued suddenly came through. A forgotten debt was forgiven. A refund check arrived for something she'd written off months ago. 6 months later, her entire financial situation had transformed in ways she couldn't have orchestrated or predicted. But here's the revelation that meant more to Maria than any amount of money. Her relationship with God completely changed. She stopped approaching the divine as a desperate beggar and started experiencing herself as a beloved child receiving her inheritance. The external abundance followed this internal shift in consciousness, not the other way around. David's journey reveals this same hidden pattern. For 5 years he battled a chronic health condition that medical treatments couldn't resolve. He exhausted himself with desperate healing prayers, attending every prayer meeting, anointing himself with oil, declaring healing scriptures. His asking had become almost violent in its intensity, shaking his fists at heaven, demanding God answer. Yet his body remained sick, and his prayers felt like they were hitting a ceiling and bouncing back. If this message created a shift in how you see your spiritual life, a gentle tap on the like button helps this teaching reach others who are ready for it. Just as divine abundance flows effortlessly when we open ourselves to receive it, your simple action creates ripples that help others discover this truth. The turning point arrived when someone introduced him to Wigglesworth's writings on spiritual healing. The concept startled him at first. What if healing wasn't something God needed to send from a distance, but something already present in his true spiritual nature? What if his desperate asking was actually the barrier preventing him from experiencing the wholeness that was already his? He began a different practice. Each day, instead of begging for healing, he would sit quietly and affirm, "I am open to receive the perfect health that is my divine inheritance." He stopped fighting his symptoms and started resting in divine presence. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Some days were harder than others, but slowly, steadily, symptoms began shifting. Within a year, medical tests confirmed what David already felt inside: significant improvement. His doctor used words like spontaneous remission. David had different language for it: learning to receive what God had already given. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because these aren't isolated incidents or lucky coincidences. There's a specific spiritual blueprint at work here that explains why this shift from asking to receiving creates such dramatic transformation in the physical world. Write "from beggar to beloved" in the comments if you're beginning to see how this internal transformation might be the missing piece in your own journey. The same blueprint reveals itself in relationships, often the most challenging arena for this practice. Jennifer spent years praying fervently for God to change her husband. Her prayers were detailed, specific, urgent. "Please make him understand me. Fix our communication. Change his heart. Soften his attitude." She approached God like a repair service, constantly submitting work orders for her marriage. When she encountered Wigglesworth's teaching, the concept felt almost dangerous. If I stop asking God to fix my husband, our marriage will definitely fall apart, she thought. But her current approach clearly wasn't working. The more intensely she prayed for her husband to change, the more distant he seemed to become. So she tried something that felt counterintuitive and even risky. She stopped asking God to change her husband entirely. Instead, she practiced receiving divine love into her own consciousness. Each morning, she would sit quietly and simply open herself to receive God's love, not asking for anything external to change, but allowing her inner being to be filled with divine presence. The transformation that followed happened so subtly at first that she almost didn't notice it. She found herself responding differently to her husband, not through forced effort or willpower, but naturally, almost effortlessly, less reactive, more peaceful, genuinely more loving without pretense. And here's where the hidden mechanics become visible. As her consciousness shifted from asking to receiving, her husband began responding differently. Not because she manipulated him or because God finally answered her prayers to change him, but because she had changed the energetic dynamic of their entire relationship. Genuine healing occurred through inner transformation rather than external manipulation. Thomas discovered this same pattern in his professional life, though his journey began at what felt like rock bottom. When his once thriving business collapsed, pushing him toward bankruptcy, his prayers became desperate bargaining sessions with God. "I'll serve you forever if you save my business. I'll give everything to charity. I'll be a better person. Please, God, don't let me lose everything." Every prayer dripped with fear, panic, and the exhausting energy of trying to convince God to rescue him. The mindset revolution arrived when someone handed him one of Wigglesworth's books. The approach seemed almost irresponsible at first. Stop begging for business success. Just open himself to divine guidance and supply. When he was weeks away from losing everything, but desperation creates openness to what seems radical. He began practicing receptive consciousness. Instead of his frantic morning prayers filled with fear and bargaining, he would sit quietly and affirm, "I am open to the infinite supply of God. I receive divine wisdom for my next steps. I rest in the knowledge that God's abundance is my abundance." The panic that had been his constant companion began to subside, replaced by something he hadn't felt in months: clarity. Ideas started flowing. Connections appeared that seemed coincidental at first but revealed themselves as orchestrated. Opportunities manifested in ways he never would have predicted or pursued through his own limited thinking. Within 18 months, Thomas had not only recovered from near bankruptcy, but had created a more successful business, one that felt aligned with his actual purpose, rather than just his survival instincts. The external recovery followed the internal shift in consciousness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because while these stories are inspiring, they reveal something even more profound about how divine supply actually operates in the practical details of daily life. There's a specific technique Wigglesworth taught for maintaining this receptive consciousness, not just in meditation, but in the middle of ordinary moments. Put inner shift, outer change in the comments if you're seeing the pattern of how consciousness transformation creates circumstantial transformation in these stories. While those 10 quiet minutes each morning create the foundation, the real transformation happens when this receptive awareness starts infiltrating your ordinary moments. Wigglesworth understood something most spiritual teachers miss. The true art of allowing God to live through you doesn't happen in isolated meditation sessions. It unfolds in the texture of everyday life, in the mundane moments we usually dismiss as spiritually insignificant. Imagine this practice woven throughout your actual day. You're washing dishes, and instead of mentally rehearsing your worries, you pause for just 3 seconds and acknowledge, God is here. You're stuck in traffic, and rather than spiraling into frustration, you take a breath and recognize, divine presence is with me right now. You're sitting in a tense meeting, and before you speak, you silently affirm, infinite wisdom is flowing through this moment. You're waiting in line at the grocery store, and instead of scrolling mindlessly through your phone, you simply notice, I am immersed in divine supply. These micro moments of acknowledgement might seem almost trivial at first, but behind the scenes, something profound is happening. Each brief recognition acts like a reset button for your consciousness. You're training your awareness to default to receptive mode, rather than constantly slipping back into asking mode. You're rewiring your neural pathways to recognize divine presence as your baseline reality, not something you only access during designated spiritual time. The impact of this practice becomes visible in your decisions. Instead of approaching choices from anxiety about making the wrong move, you start making decisions from a place of trust that divine intelligence is guiding you. Your relationships shift because you're no longer relating from neediness, but from fullness. Opportunities become visible, that were always there but hidden from your awareness when you were operating from lack consciousness. But Wigglesworth took this even further with what he called the releasing treatment. This approach completely revolutionizes how we handle life's challenges. Traditional prayer teaches us to identify a problem and ask God to fix it. We see the illness, the financial crisis, the relationship conflict, and we petition God to remove these conditions. We treat the problem itself, focusing all our energy on what's wrong and begging for it to change. Wigglesworth discovered something radically different. Don't treat the condition at all. Treat your consciousness to receive the truth of wholeness that already exists. When you're facing any challenge, a health diagnosis, a financial emergency, a relationship breakdown, instead of asking God to remove the problem, you practice something that initially feels impossible. I release this situation to divine intelligence. I open myself to receive God's perfect solution. I rest in the truth that infinite wisdom is already resolving this in ways I cannot yet see. This isn't denial of reality or spiritual bypassing. It's recognition of a deeper reality beneath surface appearances. You're not trying to change what is. You're opening yourself to perceive what truly is in spiritual terms, allowing God's perfect expression to manifest through the situation in ways your limited human thinking could never orchestrate. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a massive obstacle that almost everyone encounters when they first attempt this releasing practice. Your mind will scream that you're being irresponsible, that you're giving up, that you're not taking action. Understanding how to work with this resistance is crucial. Type "releasing, not fixing" in the comments if this distinction between treating conditions versus treating consciousness is starting to make sense to you. The biggest obstacle you'll face when practicing this receptive approach isn't external resistance. It's the internal war that erupts the moment you stop striving. There's a persistent, almost unbearable feeling that you're doing absolutely nothing. And in a culture that worships hustle, productivity, and making things happen, this feeling can become so uncomfortable that it drives most people right back to the familiar territory of asking and begging. Asking feels active, powerful, like you're taking charge. You're doing something. You're making your case to God. You're pursuing your breakthrough with intensity. Your ego loves this approach because it gets to maintain the illusion of control. But receiving? Receiving feels passive, lazy, even irresponsible. Your mind starts screaming, you can't just sit there, you have to ask, you have to pursue, you have to make things happen. If you don't beg God for help, nothing will change. But here's the revelation that transforms everything. This discomfort is actually a sign of profound progress. What you're experiencing isn't failure. It's the dissolution of ego patterns that have dominated your spiritual life for years, maybe decades. The feeling of doing nothing is actually the feeling of stopping your interference with divine flow. You're not being passive, you're being receptive, which is intensely active in the spiritual dimension, even though it feels like surrender in the human dimension. Think about learning to float in water. The first time you try, every instinct tells you to tense up, to thrash, to fight to stay above the surface. And what happens? You sink. Only when you completely relax, when you stop trying so hard, when you trust the water itself, that's when you discover it naturally supports you. The journey from striving to allowing, from controlling to surrendering, represents the core transformation in spiritual consciousness. Behind the scenes, what's really happening during this uncomfortable transition is a fundamental identity shift. For most of your life, you've operated from a belief system that says you are a separate human being trying to get things from an external deity. This belief creates a gap, an unbridgeable distance between you and your good, between you and divine supply, between who you are and what you need. But the ultimate truth Wigglesworth uncovered shatters this entire paradigm. You are not separate from God trying to receive gifts from an external source. You are the very consciousness of God, receiving awareness of your own infinite nature. When you practice receiving, you're not getting something new that was previously absent. You're removing the veil that blocked your recognition of what has always been yours. This is why asking never truly worked. No matter how sincerely or intensely you prayed, you were essentially asking yourself to give yourself what you already possessed. You were demanding that God provide what God has never stopped providing. The problem was never God's unwillingness to give. The problem was your inability to receive because your consciousness was focused on lack rather than abundance, on separation rather than oneness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding this intellectually is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you start experiencing this truth in your body, in your emotions, in your daily decisions. There's a specific shift that occurs when you truly grasp that you're not begging an external God but recognizing your own divine nature. Write, "I am divine consciousness" in the comments if this truth is beginning to resonate somewhere deeper than your intellectual understanding. You've stayed with me through this entire journey, and that tells me something important. This message resonated with something real inside you. You're not just casually watching videos. You're genuinely searching for a deeper truth about your relationship with the divine, and that's exactly why I create this content. If these insights have shifted something in your awareness, if you're beginning to see prayer and divine connection through completely different eyes, I'd love for you to join this community of seekers who are moving from asking consciousness to receiving consciousness. A simple subscription means you'll continue receiving teachings that explore this path of spiritual transformation. And honestly, these conversations are just getting started. Let me know you made it all the way through by writing "This message was meant for me" in the comments. When I see those words, I know this teaching landed exactly where it needed to. Your presence here matters more than you realize. And if this conversation created a genuine shift in how you understand your spiritual life, a gentle tap on that like button helps this message reach others who are ready for it. Divine abundance flows effortlessly when we open ourselves to receive it, and your simple action creates ripples that help others discover this teaching too. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the practical daily habits that reinforce this receiving consciousness. It's the natural next step in this journey. Click and continue with me over there, because what you're about to discover will show you exactly how to maintain this awareness when life gets challenging. Remember, you're not becoming something new. You're simply recognizing what you've always been, one with the infinite source of all.